Very good. Thank you. Our next presentation is from Sandy Wilkins. And Sandy, we're going to ask you to turn your camera on. We'd love to see your smiling face. There she is. Wonderful. Now, Sandy is a longtime shade gardener. She's held many offices in local and national garden and Hosta groups, and she is one of the founders of Hosta College. I believe Sandy can correct me, 29 years ago now. You must have been 12 when you started Hosta
Yes.
College, Sandy.
Thank you, Dick. I was.
And now enjoys sharing her two great loves, gardening and teaching Bible studies. Sandy is going to take a little bit of a difference away from Hosta. This is going to be fun. I've looked over the presentation. It's exciting. The Arctic and Antarctic to the ends of the earth. Sandy, the forum is yours. You can go ahead and screen share. We'll look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, now can you, all right, so you're seeing it? Okay. First of all, thank you to the board for the invitation and the help. This is a long way from where we began with 50 people and a projector and slides. So luckily I've had my nephew here. I've been very nervous about doing this. So I really have been in awe this morning of the scientists. So this is a brain break for you because it's not going to be that scientific, but it is a beautiful travel. So we're going to go to the ends of the earth. We did this for my husband's 70th birthday year. That's what he wanted to do. So Antarctica is a continent that is surrounded by ocean. And here is Antarctica, doubles in what's the winter for it. This would the only other continent as big as this is Russia. So Antarctica is really huge. No one really owns it. 46 nations have sort of joined together. There's nobody that lives there permanently. I put this in just to give you an idea of how big Antarctica really is. The United States would fit in there, and this is before all the snow comes. The Arctic, however, is an ocean surrounded by continents. And here you can see the little circle is where we're going to go in a few minutes. But here you can see all the countries that border the Arctic Circle. The United States because of Alaska, but we have Canada, Russia, and Greenland, which we're going to see shelf ice is a part of it too. They do have some things in common, however. So there are things that are different, but there are things in common. They both have snow and ice, obviously. They both have what we call the northern lights in the north and the southern lights in the south, but beautiful lights. And like we're used to in the north, there's either 24 hours of sun or 24 hours of really shade. It's not darkness. Obviously, they both are freezing. They both have icebergs. They have blizzards. They have snowstorms. And they're the most arid places on Earth. Somehow, I always think of snow. Well, it's frozen water, so it must be moist. But that is not really true. So these are very arid areas. In Antarctica, the icebergs come from glaciers, but they also come from shelf life. And we're going to look at that. And that is really ice that forms on the land, and then it goes out to the sea. These are so huge. You can measure them in like miles, 25 miles. These things are gigantic, and you'll see some pictures. What's really amazing is they're going to float to the open sea as they break off and calve. The winds, the waters make these incredible shapes. I hope you can sort of get a feel here from this picture. It's sort of cloudy there a lot during the day. It's very mystical, actually, and quite beautiful to see. I don't know if you can see our little zodiac out there or not. It really is an iceberg factory down here in Antarctica. There's sometimes over 3,000 icebergs at one time. In the Arctic, the glaciers, the icebergs are glacial ice. It's the same blue, but you can see it looks quite different, and they are seasonal. These are more measured in yards. There's no comparison in the size, although these are pretty big and pretty interesting, but there's no tabular melt here. So When you want to go to Antarctica would be what is winter for us, because later, again, it doubles in size. There's this ice everywhere. And of course, the opposite is true in the north. And so in March, it is completely almost covered in the Arctic. And the only real landmass that you have is over Greenland. Here's what Antarctica looks like, just the base of it. So it's really, as a continent, only about 100 feet above sea level. But look how high it is, 9,300 feet with the ice. So it's totally pretty much covered with ice. There's not really any fertile soil there. Very few species of plants go, and you're not going to be too impressed when you see them. And no trees and shrubs are here. There is an area called the banana belt, because it melts a little bit, but the ice really covers almost all of Antarctica. And it's amazing because 90% of the Earth's ice comes from here and 80% of the fresh water. But the mean temperature here is 58 degrees below zero. So that sort of explains why we don't have a population that wants to stay here. If you compare that with the North Pole, it's like 1,400 feet below sea level, and there's 3 feet of sea ice. So again, we've got a similar but a very different situation. But when I tell you that the temperature at the North Pole is only 0, that sounds like balmy, right? Compared to 58 below. So what about human activity around the poles? Well, in the Arctic, there are a lot of native people and ethnic groups. We looked at the continents that sort of come around the Arctic Circle. 60 degrees north or 60 degrees south is kind of what is considered the circle, really. People have been up here exploiting resources for a long time. Nobody really knows when the first crossing was up here because it's been inhabited. Things have been going on here for a long time. In Antarctica, there's no native groups there. There's no primitive people there. And again, it's the 60-degree mark. They're very, very particular on native resources, what can be done there. We do know the first crossing was in 1773, and what a harrowing crossing that was. So since we are gardeners and care about plants and animals, what about the plants and animals in Antarctica? And here's a picture. There are no mammals in Antarctica. So no polar bears down there. It's cold, but no mammals at all. There are marine mammals, however, whales and porpoises and seals, that kind of thing. There's no tundra or tree line either. So I showed you the picture of Antarctica, what the base looks like. It's really rock. Well, here you can see a little bit of this. Now, in the winter here, this would totally be covered with big ice melts. What now? The plant life, here it is. So I guess this is native species too. So there's a little bit of hair grass and mostly lichens. So you can sort of see them up there. And what actually happens is with the lichens, with the sea algae, it sort of forms on the guano of the penguins. So there's penguins everywhere. So here you can kind of see this. And I hope you can tell these are all penguins here in the bottom on the rock. So we have them melt because this is February, but you can see the lichens and stuff on the edge of the snow there. So basically, you don't go to Antarctica for the flora. You go for the experience, I guess, really. That is not the case in the Arctic, and it's amazing, the plants in the Arctic. It has a tree line. It does have whales and porpoises and seals as well. It also has amphibious mammals. The tundra is an especially unique situation because it's frozen down so far. Then in the summer, only the top melts. Actually, this very unique biome I saw in my yard this year, in 27 years, I've never seen this. We had such a hard freeze that when a little bit of melt came, my yard was flooded, and I have sand, and it's the exact same situation that we see in the tundra. So it's wet on top in the tundra, even in the spring. They have lots and lots of birds that migrate to the Arctic, but of course, no flightless birds, because there's no way to walk. There's no way for them to get there. But here's where we have, the ox and the reindeer and the fox and bears, and the animals are here. And of course, polar bears are there. So this is a picture of a tundra, but we're going to look at it closer when we get back to the Arctic. But we're going to start with the Antarctic. And again, this was February. So January, February, early March is when you would go to Antarctica, because otherwise it's so big, you can't get in. It's doubled in size. We went on this little ship. It was with Silver Sea. It was Prince Albert then. I think it's called the Expedition now. It is double hulled, and it only holds 100 people. So it's very small to get down into Antarctica. And we'll see that on a map. So Jim and I left from Detroit. We flew to Buenos Aires, and then we're going to go down here to Ushuaia, the very southernmost city in the world. And from there, we'll sail to Antarctica. So this is Ushuaia. You can see the mountains. Again, this is February, so it's summer for them. And actually, when we were there, I think it was warmer in Antarctica than it was in Michigan. But so here's the flowers that they have planted. Lots of lupins around, and lupins technically are where the soil isn't great. Here's a picture of Jim. You'll see him in red again, but you won't see him in short sleeves anymore because we're going down where it's cold. So here's where we're going to sail. This is called the Drake Passage. This is the most fertile and the most dangerous waters of the world, because the warm water mixes with the cold water, and you're never quite sure how turbulent it's going to be, but it's also the most biologically productive water in the world. And it was fun because on our way, there were birds that followed the ship the whole time. So here's the petrel, the albatross, they were fun to see. So this is the Drake Passage. So when we went, it looked kind of like this. It was sort of rocky, but not too bad. And this was our little dining room, and they had, stemmed wine glasses. When it gets rough, those are gone, and we get the tumblers. Coming back, it was so bad. They had straps on our bed so that you would have to be strapped in at night so that you wouldn't roll out. So again, you never quite know what the Drake Passage is going to be. Here is a map of Antarctica. Sometimes bigger ships can go up, like at the South Shetlands, and see that, but it's very hard for a bigger ship to get down in there. In fact, they really can't. So this ship is so small, we're going to go. Now, this is still called the warm zone. Nobody really goes into the main part that I know of. So here's one of the tabular ice fields. So even though this isn't a huge ship, you can sort of get an idea how big this really is. And if you notice on the top, it's already starting to split, because that's what it does. It calves off. These contain 90% of the world's ice. That's pretty amazing. And this probably gives you a little better perspective. So here we are in our red coats. It's beautiful. I mean, the ice is absolutely beautiful. My husband had a good camera, so you can see in the top. So we got a good picture of that. It looks like a scene from Frozen or something, right? I mean, it's stunning, and the colors are beautiful. So somehow what happens is it squeezes the water out, the salt out, and it becomes fresh water. And again, 70% of the world's water comes from here. So there's just another picture of it. Going ashore is interesting. So what happens is we're going to be on these little zodiacs. I think there's 8 in our guide. So you wait in your room until your number's called, and then you're going to go get in. So in your room, you put on, the long underwear, waterproof stuff, sweatshirts, all of that. You have a life preserver, kind of a backpack kind of a thing, and then your number's called and you come down. And hopefully you can see it there. There's a little bench with a hose. Antarctica is very, very specific that you have to have your wellies, they're called, they're rubber boots really, disinfected because they don't want you to bring anything on Antarctica, right? They're very, very protective. So you do all that. Be sure that your boots are perfectly clean and inspected. In fact, as you get off the ship, you step in like a bowl of some kind of disinfectant. So here's what happens. This is the end, but you come down, you're going to get in your little Zodiac. So here we are, here Jim and I are in our little Zodiac. And I was so excited that I'm going to be on my 7th continent. I just couldn't wait. Here I am. I'm going to actually touch foot on Antarctica. And here's what I did. I touched foot and I fell down right in penguin guano. And no, that isn't my husband in front of me that doesn't know I've fallen. He's behind me taking this picture. Anyway, that was my introduction, but I loved it. So here is one of the scientific stations, but look at the snow around it. It's really hard to imagine, but this shows you what the native rock it really is and how deep the snow is. And this is, again, in summer, in their summer. So this is a place where we were. This gives you a little perspective. You can see how big this is compared to 6-foot men. So if you see in that picture, like the darker blues, that's where it's going to start to calve. And actually, when we were here, pieces broke off. The penguins knew it first. They knew it before we heard anything. So then you hear this sort of a noise and it breaks off. Everybody goes running. This phase is because of the smell, because the penguins and the seals leave their smell. There was a protection act that was passed that you're not supposed to get 15 feet within them from the animals. That's very hard to do. Here you can see algae and some kelp have kind of washed up on shore. But the penguins, there's no predators here, no land predators. So the only predator a penguin has is a leopard seal, and a leopard seal will take a penguin. But on land, there's no predator, so they have nothing to be afraid of. So they come right up to you. I take that back. They have one predator on land, and that is the skua. So here you can see he's taken a penguin egg, because again, this is spring for them. So we're having babies and eggs. So they will come and get the eggs. The penguins are the most amazing thing to watch. So here you can see, this is that tabular ice that you saw, the square, but it's been smoothed by the waters and the winds. You can sort of see where they've left their guano. So they just play on this all day. And so they jump off, they dive off. They're so cute, really. And then they play in the water and they come back up and they just do it again. And actually, penguins are much better in the water. And then, of course, they're birds. And some of these birds spend their whole life in flight. I don't know how they do it, but and different sizes of the species. Here's the wandering albatross. Some of these albatross can have a wingspan of 9 feet. These are big birds. And sometimes they eat scraps or something from the ship, but also, of course, they eat the fish. There's several kinds of penguins in Antarctica. This is one of them, and the most prevalent, the Gen 2 pigeon penguins. So again, you can see the baby. So this is spring. This is when the babies are born. And Jim got this great picture of, this is how the mama feeds the baby. So they eat and regurgitate it and feed the baby. Here's their little feet, which are stained from walking. This is the chin strap penguin. He always looks like he's got a funny smile. So these are obviously now small icebergs that have broken off. And of course, the seals are making their home there. I like this picture because I like the color. but also makes me think of like the Titanic, you know, when so much is more under the water than what you even see on top, actually. So here's just the first, again, they're just right there. They have no fear. So they're just right there. It's filled with killer whales. And this is just one of those tabular ice that through the winds have made these really interesting formations. We got up early one morning, so there we are in the zodiac. It was just sort of it's like nothing else in the world. I don't even know how to really explain it. It's so quiet, so quiet. Another thing is things don't decay really in Antarctica. I think we should have stayed there, right? I'd still be 30. So what I want to show you about that is, so here, our ship went all the way down here to this very bottom. So that's where we're going to go, to Detali Island. So it was established, this camp, in the 50s. It was a survey camp. And here's a picture of it. It was closed in 1959. So what happened was things freeze very quickly, and this land ice, the shelf ice, can just cover the land very quickly. So in 1959, which is 53 years from where we saw it, they had to get out quickly so they could take really nothing with them. They sledded over, because if they didn't get on a ship and get out, they would be stuck there, the prisoners there. This is what it looked like after 53 years. It looked like people left yesterday, right? Or last week. I mean, look at this. There's long johns hanging on a clothesline after 53 years. There's bedding, because they don't have moths, they don't have insects, all the things that cause decay don't live there. Actually, here's some magazines. There's Joan Collins. I hope you can see her there with her cigarette. There were cigarettes there, perfectly, again, just like it had just happened. It's over 50 years. So that's what happens when you don't have the bugs, I guess. So we left there, and we made several stops along the way. Now we're going to head back north, because we're going to come obviously back home. And so what happened is there were these abandoned bases that it was decided they would make them working bases again, and probably truthfully because of tourism. But we were going to stop at Port Lockroy. That was the one where we are, the one there. So it's going to look like it did in 1962. And for part of the year, it's a working base. And a lot of these bases, they can work for part of the year, but then part of the year you can't even get in there. So here it is. And again, you can see what the real strata is of Antarctica. It's rock. What was great here is I always look for the gift shop. And this was going to be our gift shop. And it also was a post office and a base station. So again, it was a base station, but only for part of the year. Well, so there's not a lot of shopping here. It's not really much of a store, but I did mail a card home. It took 2 months to get the card back, but at least I could mail it, right? By now, some people are still enchanted with the penguins. By the way, all the white is, of course, them. So lots of photographs to take. We're going to see penguins just one last time. And so this part of the journey, I want to finish up with just the landscape. And I hope you can see like the little zodiac there, how really big and huge these are, and really otherworldly. So there's several kinds of whales. There's killer whales, there's blue whales, there's minke whales. And it's fun just to see them. Again, here's a penguin in water. And we did actually see a leopard seal get one, but very peaceful. And again, lots of birds against this beautiful wall of really ice and color and the most beautiful blues actually I've ever seen. And there's a great picture of it too. And of course, then there's ice under there as well. So this is about the most amazing of the sunsets. It doesn't get much darker than this when we were there. But again, you can see where a lot of the tabular ice now is melted off. And, there's beaches where you can walk. It's still quite beautiful, and lots of beautiful ice formations on this quiet coast. But yet here's a great picture of this pristine beauty that you can just see as it comes down and it melts off and it breaks off. And it's really a different world there. And hopefully you can tell these big, huge, they're miles of this tabular ice as Antarctica downsizes in the spring and the summer. And here's a little surprise seal sleeping off his krill on just this floating bed, taking him along. And there's a piece here that sort of floods your sort of innermost being. It's sort of something we get from the garden, most of us. Like, I love my garden just for the peace of it. This is kind of a piece sort of everywhere. And yet life exists here where you wouldn't think that it would. And even the birds that have adapted and can live here. And of course, the penguins. So this is sort of a last look at a real winter garden. And this is land where a lot of explorers died trying to find something here. And yet we get to see just a piece of maybe what they saw. But yet we get to go to a ship that will take us safely home. So we'll end with this leopard seal, and again, just say goodbye to incredible ice sculptures and beauty and quiet and the animals that somehow can survive here. This is a crab eater seal. There's a Ross seal. And if we have more time, we would linger here, but we don't. So we've just seen a part of the wonder that's here. But wonder is everywhere, really, when we look at it, right? So one last formation and just the tip of the iceberg, really. But here's the sunset. This is about as dark as it gets. Actually, in our ship, we had blinds to close because it never is fully dark. But we are going to leave here and we are going to sail north. And honestly, as we did, I was sort of more bewildered when I left than when I came. I didn't know what to expect. It was more than I expected and more questions than I had when I came. So we're home for a while, and now we're going to sail to the Arctic. So this is in July, which would be summer there. We're on the exact same ship, which was kind of nice because we by now knew the crew. And this time we're going to sail from Detroit. We're going to Oslo, Norway. Then we took another plane up to Tromsø, and we'll take the ship up to Svalbard. But you can see as the season changes, as you look down there, you can see Antarctica. So the ship comes up, again, same ship. We spent a couple of days in Oslo. This is their botanical garden, which was amazing too. Things I had never seen before, but that's another topic. So here's Svalbard. This is where we're going. And you can see how high up it will go. It'll actually go up into the 80th, I think. So there was a passage to get there. It was really interesting, but certainly nothing like the Drake Passage. There's nothing like that. And of course, we're seeing wildlife and birds, some different kinds of birds, many, many more. Here's the fulmars. And you can see the seabirds are really pretty amazing. As we got closer to land, we saw puffin. All of us sort of love the puffin, right? This was our first stop. It looked like the brown bluff that we saw in Antarctica, but now we're seeing vegetation on it, and not just algae, but actual vegetation. So Arctic birds hide in the cliffs here, and they make their roosts here. But the principle is sort of the same, right? The excrement, the guano, sort of enhances plant life growth here. It's just, this is much more conducive to it. And if you can tell, there's all these little crags here. This is alive with birds. This is a perfect place for them, and they love it. So here you can see, I hope you can see, there's plants and birds. Again, this is the face of the mountain, but we see all kinds of algae and things growing there. It's hard to get a perception sometimes when you just see a picture. So if you can look at the bottom there, if you see that little piece of red, that's our zodiac. So this gives you sort of a perspective on how actually huge these formations are. And there's all kinds of caverns in here that you can take your little zodiac in. It's really quite incredible. And here's some of those crags. So Jim had some kind of a special zoom lens on his camera, but you can see the guano, and then of course, sort of like whitewashing the mountain. So this is kind of a native bird there. There are very many of those, but look at all the green around it. I mean, look at all the plant life around this. And the gull. Any of these names from now on that you see up here in blue, it's the Norway name, which I can't pronounce. So this was one of our first passages. The week before, the ship couldn't get in here, it was all frozen. So that's kind of what happens in the Arctic Circle. You know, as it gets warmer and warmer, some of these passages open that are completely frozen off in the winter. This is glacial ice, so it's a little bit different. And of course, it's going to bang around in here because it's in a confined space, where in Antarctica, the tabular ice can just float off. So it's a little different here. And when it does bang around, you get this kind of situation, right? Where it topples on top of each other. And the color's the same, but you can see the striation is very much different. However, there can be huge layers of it, as you see right there. So you see our little zodiac here. This is clinging to the land, but it's quite large. And this was one of our first steps on land. It doesn't look like much. It looks kind of barren, right? Until you start taking a closer look. And we were very fortunate because I think Steve was talking about the ephemerals before. You know, you only have a short time for these, and that's what we're going to see here. So here's alpine grass. Again, it's a very rocky soil. And as we walked along, again, we didn't have penguins, we didn't have fur seals, but we started seeing plant life that we hadn't seen before. And there you can see it. So we knew we were here at a good time, and we were going to see all kinds of great things to come. Interesting birds, because by now the birds are coming back. So here's a little sandpiper. This is called gentian. It looks like a perfect little plant in this rocky soil where it looks like really nothing can grow. You can see a couple other things. So this was before Apple Watch, but it's about the size of an Apple Watch. So this is my watch. So I laid it down, I put it next to show the size of this. I mean, this thing is teeny, teeny, tiny, but perfect. And so of course there's all kinds of grasses, lots of chickweed. So I don't particularly like chickweed at home, but here it was beautiful. So look at the soil that this is growing in. It doesn't look like it's conducive to much. And yet these little rock plants are incredible. In fact, the first time I'd heard the term saxifrage as a species was in a rock garden. Well, now I see where they came from, because there are all kinds of saxifrage up in the Arctic. And again, they come up, they bloom, they set seed, they do what they need to do in a very small amount of time, a short window. These are whale bones. And in the Arctic, I showed you a picture of Jim holding a whale bone that just stayed pretty much like it always was. It's a little different here because of the temperature, now we're getting mosses that grow on them. We don't have that kind of plant life in Antarctica. So you can see there, they're almost though petrified, really. But they're home to not only the mosses, but if you can see there, there's saxifrage growing in there too. So there's lots of flora growing on the moss on the old whale bones. And kelp, much, much larger than we saw in Antarctica. In Antarctica, we just saw little pieces that brushed up on shore. Here we see the whole thing. And here we have moss champion, saxifrage. This is something you can't really see at a distance until you like get up on it. And it was incredible. And the more you walked, the more you saw. I was sort of afraid to even walk because it was sort of everywhere. You can kind of see our ship anchored out there. And again, we took the same little zodiacs in. And again, this is wet and sort of soggy, but incredible. And it's hard almost to do this justice because these are so small and you have to really get down there to see them. But they're amazing, and they just grow up by themselves, like Lord planted them. Here's more saxifrage. This is a drooping saxifrage. It's up. Black fleabane. Probably if you're a rock gardener, you might know some of these. It was all sort of new to me, but it was amazing where it could grow, like right here, like right under a little rock. This was something I'd never seen before, which were walruses. So they spend about a third of their time on land or ice, and the other two in the ocean. They can live for like 40 years, really. They're really a very kind of a unique creature. So when we were first there was a group of them laying, and they don't have very good eyesight, but they do have pretty good ears. So he heard something. So here's, the leader maybe sort of raising his head. We were to be like quiet, not to startle them and startle the whole group. So he heard us. He just sort of laid back down and went to sleep. Again, we were supposed to be sort of quiet when we were there. They aren't born with tusks, but they grow tusks, male and female. And these tusks grow through their whole life. So the males are longer and bigger, but apparently it's a sign of status. The longer tusk that you have, the bigger tusk that you have. I don't know. Anyway, here's some more kelp. And again, we're seeing lots of life here in the Arctic that we didn't get to see in the Antarctic. More saxifrage. And again, it's so, I'm going to put that back. It's so incredible when you look close there, but yet you could almost pass it by. So finally, we get to see our first polar bear. So this gives you kind of a perspective of what the land looks like too, not the great big rocks that we saw in Antarctica. But we were very excited to see a polar bear. And then we stopped at what's called the 14th of July Glacier. And it was named this because that was the day it was discovered. I thought the 4th of July might have been a better name because the fireworks you're going to see are breathtaking here. So this is by a glacier that we'll see. That's the glacier. And this is mostly what you have in the Arctic. So again, it comes down, it breaks off, it melts. But look at all the green here. And so this is typical tundra, receding glaciers and melted areas that are nearby. That's pretty much what the tundra is. And there's a kind of a close-up of the tundra. You can see even the colors though in the soil here. Look at that green. was it was so beautiful to me. And the colors of green, I'm always amazed at that in the Hosta garden too, how many colors and shades of green there really are. And again, different birds. So now this is spring, so the birds are coming, right? And these are little snow buntings. They were everywhere, actually. And lichens. So lichens are sort of a symbol that you have really great air, really. So I saw lichens here I hadn't seen before, and you can see them on this rock. So this is orange lichen. But look at the color. I'd never seen that color before of a lichen. And then there were the yellow ones too, but such bright colors, which sort of surprised me. And this is called reindeer moss, which is pretty appropriately named because we're going to see the reindeer in a minute, and that's exactly what their horns kind of look like. Apparently this stays white all year, and it lives just underneath the snow, so it can survive the snow. It's not particularly an ephemeral, I guess. We had a specialist with us to help us identify plants and that kind of thing that we saw. This seemed to sort of be a mystery. You know, it looks like string or something on there. Apparently it's a lichen, but he wasn't sure what the name was. So I just thought it was pretty unique. And here's the puffins. So again, I like the puffins, but look at this rocky crag. So here's where his nest is, but look at the plant life around this in solid rock. And this is nothing from what we're going to see. So here's just another picture of the puffin up there in his little crag with a beautiful view. But not all is perfect here either. So here is a gull stealing the little ox eggs. Again, it's spring, we're laying eggs. This is those reindeer that the moss was named the reindeer moss. Who knows what they're eating, right? I know what they're eating in my yard, and I guess they look cuter here, right? Because it's not my yard. So you can see how rocky it is. And as the rock comes down, nothing could have prepared me for this. So you see the little yellow on the hill. It's really these, it kind of looks like a dandelion, but not. But look at this. This is a real rock garden. So if you're a rock gardener, this is the ultimate. And it's just like it like defies gravity, just hanging there. And it was incredible. So we walked around, and the more you looked, the more you saw. So here you can see all the mosses, this perfect environment for these ephemerals here. And so I have several pictures of this because I was just mesmerized by it, actually. And then as you look close up, see there's the saxifrage again, and things are growing in the moss. So the more you look at this, really the more you saw. And here's moss growing on old moss. So Bob Solberg would love this, the mosses, but absolutely incredible. And look at this. It's like a miracle to me out of rock. Look what comes out of here. And these are thick and incredible. And here's just some of them close up. This is Whitlow. Again, different colors of Whitlow and mountain sorrel. So we've seen that, but here it is. And again, all kinds of saxifrage. And this is like hanging on a cliff, but look how thick and how happy it is. This was amazing to me, some of these. And here it is like defying gravity, right? I mean, it's like on the side of a hill, and yet it's beautiful. It was also nice. So here's Jim taking these pictures, actually, because we didn't have to crawl on our belly. I got that job. So he got the straight on and I got the crawl down. But look how incredible this is. And I don't know what to name this picture except what a God we have. This is just a rock. And look at the life growing out of just a rock. right? You don't even have to amend the soil. It's just there. So I know there's a spiritual application to all this, and I don't know how you could top this, right? And it's just here, and it's just for such a short time, and then it'll be gone until next year, and it'll come back even better. So again, this is just more pictures of it because it was fascinating to me. But we can't stay here forever. So here again is the glacier. I didn't know what to expect with the Arctic, but it was incredible, really. And so we made our way around, and you can still see the melt happening here. A little more interesting in the hills and the snows in the hills. But this is the northernmost part in Norway. So now we're up to like 80 degrees, and we don't have the melt up here yet. So you can see the polar bears just walking on the ice. And there are some like snow mounds in there, but some of this will probably never really thaw. So again, this is 80 degrees. And in the winter, of course, this all becomes solid ice. But for now, we're in the melt off, and there's the polar bears. Here's some of the melt off. And again, we've looked at, am I going? No, I'm not going back. This is sort of what happens. It just gets smaller and smaller and warms up. But just like we saw in Antarctica, animals are going to hop on and take a ride if they can. This is called an eared seal, which is sort of funny to me because it doesn't really have any ears. But the whales, so we see the whales again, and the puffin. And as things start to melt, here is a polar bear. It's probably the most photographed bear on our whole trip, because he was like, this was beside our ship, actually. So he's just floating along and looking at the people and wondering why they're taking pictures of him. These are kittiwakes. So again, a lot more birds here. And here's the mama, a king eater, and her babies. And this is close to a settlement. Now, this is a permanent settlement. So most of the settlements in Antarctica are not. This is permanent, and it's halfway between Norway and the North Pole. So it's a base. And this was its gift shop again. So again, not a great gift shop, but you can see people are in their stocking feet. They're very protective here too. So it's mating season for birds, and these are the Arctic terns. Well, everyone was super excited because they just nest on the ground. So it's really easy to get a picture of them and to see their little babies. I don't know if you can see, there's a little baby there. So here is a mama. Hopefully you can see those little babies there. Well, here's the problem. They have this nesting place, and if you go take those pictures, the birds attack you. Well, I saw Alfred Hitchcock's The Bird, so there's no way I'm going to take that picture. But Jim did, he braved it. So we can thank him for those pictures, because I would never have done it. But it was worth it for him. And here is a dorm for students. They have students that come and they study there. Where they got the Chinese dragons at the door, I don't know, and why, I don't know, but that's one of the workstations where they stay. Again, this is in that area, and you can see there's more ground cover. It's just everywhere. And we have geese. Again, there's many, many more birds in the Arctic, of course, than the Antarctic, and lots of grasses. If you really look close, you can see all kinds of things going on there. Some of the plants I've showed you before. You don't see this sign every day. So this is, don't go any further. It's a polar bear. I can't really see my time, but I think I'm running out. So these are just some of the plants that grow there. Incredible. It's so beautiful and diverse. So Arctic bell kind of looks like our lily of the valley. Our last stop with this mountains, so we're going way up. You can see Jim's taking his coat off. It was warm as you climbed up, but incredible, just absolutely magnificent. The views were beautiful. Again, this is spongy, so I was crawling around for this. It didn't come up like the other one. Arctic willow that's kind of covered with some kind of a fur-like. And then there's a polar willow. Such diversity in the tundra. It's absolutely incredible. And the views are amazing. For some reason, we like the deer here. Also, there's Jim with a camera, but the guy to the left, you might notice, doesn't have a camera. He has a gun because he will shoot the polar bears. Again, beauty in such a harsh environment, the saxifrage, the little flowers growing up out of everywhere. This is the end of Jim's walking stick, just to show you how small these are. You have to crawl down to see them, but it's so worth it. They're just amazing, just amazing. So hopefully I'll just leave you with these incredible pictures and the diversity that's here. Things I'd never seen before. I knew Jacob's Ladder, but nothing like this one. And just incredible, incredible beauty. So even in the moss, there's like a little buttercup. So we say goodbye to the tundra. This was, again, very soggy. I crawled down on my hands and knees for this because these little mushrooms are the size of your fingernail, and yet look at them. So we'll just leave the beauty of the tundra, and I wish we could stay here longer because, again, it's just an incredible place. And as we leave it, I say to myself, what a wonderful world. What a wonderful world we live in, and beautiful world. So thanks for going to the ends of the earth with us. It was wonderful. And thank you for this opportunity. So. Okay.
Sandy, thank you for an incredible presentation. I only wish while you're watching, you'd be watching the chat. We've been taking a look at the chat. We don't take the questions out of there, but there have been phenomenal compliments and comments in the chat. So thank you. Everybody's really enjoying the break. We do have a few questions. We got a little bit of time here. We had a number of questions really asked about the same way. Everybody wants to know what kind of camera your husband used. Everybody's curious about the camera.
It was a Nikon with a telephoto lens, something.
So it wasn't just.
It had a big lens.
Good. It wasn't just an iPhone, obviously.
No, it wasn't an iPhone.
All right. Another question that came up a couple of different ways is, what was the company? If people are curious about who the tour company or who did the expedition, how can they get a hold of them?
Silver Sea.
Silver Sea.
And they still do it. And it's an all-inclusive. So you don't have to pay for any of the extras. They have lectures there, so they'll have ornithologists there. They have whatever you're going to see, there's someone there to lecture you, which is great. So we had classes on all this stuff. And again, somebody that would tell us what these things were, because obviously we wouldn't know. Okay. So it's a good company.
And just another note, it came up again. These are, all of our sessions are recorded. People are wanting to watch this again. They will be recorded, and they will be available from March 25th to May 25th. Ed, have you got a question or two for Sandy?
A couple of the people did ask about what was the dates and temperature range that you were working with or in?
The temperatures were really, ironically, very close to the same. So we did Antarctic in February, and we did the Arctic in July. And the Antarctic was a little colder, but 30s, maybe 28, 30, not worse than winter in Michigan, as you would know, eh? And a couple of places it was a little warmer in the Arctic, but same thing, 30, 40, maybe.
So it was tolerable. You weren't in real sub-zero.
No, but you did have to wear long underwear, and it was that kind of cold.
Okay. Beverly asked, were you restricted as to where to walk on the tundra? And she understands that it doesn't recover well from foot traffic.
Ironically, we weren't. I mean, that's why I was so nervous about it, because it doesn't recover well, but no, we weren't. And I don't know whether that'll change later, but we didn't have a walkway or anything. So no, you could walk on it.
Okay. And Elisa says she thinks she saw bands on the bird's feet. I don't know if she meant the penguins or the sea. I don't know which birds, but are they banded? Do you know if any of the birds were banded?
I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know that.
Okay.
The seabirds certainly weren't, but I don't know that.
Ed, do you have any other questions?
One came up was, did you see any pollinators for all those little flowers and everything up there?
No, it's like a miracle. Well, I don't know. To me, it was a miracle, Ed. I don't even know what the pollinators would be, because they're up and then they're gone. So I don't, I'm not the scientist.
Well, and we'll work in one more question, Sandy, from Carol. She said she's wondering if it's only a melt process, and I don't know if she meant Arctic or Antarctic. She said, is it only a melt process or snow and ice accumulated? Do you know any, you said you weren't a scientist, you know any of they tell you any of that?
Well, what they said is like certainly Antarctica. Well, you couldn't even get near Antarctica in their winter. So that is a melt process. So where we walked along the beach, you wouldn't have been able to do that, wouldn't be there. And we couldn't get into a lot of those places in the Arctic either if it wasn't a melt process. And so like I said, they bang together, but they don't have anywhere to go in the Arctic Circle. So I don't know.
Wonderful. Ed, you got anything else? I've kind of, I think, gone down most of my list. We do thank everybody for their questions. We do try to keep an eye on the question and answer area. Some of the things were comments, Sandy. Again, everybody was just marveling at your photos. I'm sure this is going to be a well-watched presentation coming up. And who knows, we may have people, bringing their friends and neighbors in. And again, Sandy, we appreciate you and your friends. Just a few years ago, I know, like I said, Sandy, you must have been a teenager.
I know, right?
We appreciate you coming up with a concept and idea of Hosta College. It has certainly, with the pandemic, taken on a new look. We'll take a moment here to share with folks that we don't know yet what Hosta College 2023 is going to bring. We do know that we're going to we're going to have some kind of Hosta College again in March of 2023. The Great Lakes Regional Board will be meeting next Saturday. We'll make a determination as to how we're moving forward. But Sandy, we had almost 450 people listening to your presentation through the information superhighway. I hope we got most continents covered. I know none of the penguins were watching. So I'm pretty sure we might have only covered 6 of the 7 continents. But we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for keeping this going. Really, it's great what you're doing. So thank you.
As you know, we missed a year. We do have a skip in there. 2020 just caught all of us by surprise.
I know.
So we scrambled last year, and Ed and I did our little comedy show with the help of our great technical team to put on a presentation. Last year, we added one more presenter. This year, we'll see what Hosta College is moving forward. Who knows? Maybe we'll all one day be back in Piqua, Ohio again. But thank you, Sandy.
Thank you so much. And what do I do?
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And everybody that's all 427 of you that are on, we're near the top of the hour. Our schedule is going to give us a half-hour lunch break. That'll be a break from 12 until 12:30 in the Eastern Daylight Time Zone. If you're in other time zones and other continents, just understand at the half hour, we'll be coming back. We have 3 more presentations coming up this afternoon. Until then, have a lunch break, go out and a stretch. I'm going to take a minute here and get a little slideshow up, and you'll be able to, watch a slideshow going. Ed, do you have any closing comments from the morning? Wonderful.
It's our live Hosta.